Across this country, thousands of protesters are standing up in defiance of these mandatory lockdown orders, saying enough. We must restore the economy or we will face something truly drastic. And the media has not been very kind, insulting them. We saw the governor of Michigan calling them bigots, among other things, Teen Vogue insulting them. Yet they seem to conveniently ignore all of the people in these Democratic-controlled cities who are going about their business at parks and beaches. Yet where's the call up for those people? Now, it exists somewhat, but they really just love digging into these Trump supporters. Meanwhile, rent strike activists have been out well before the Trump supporters were protesting and the conservatives were protesting, and the media didn't really say much other than people are protesting, they don't want to pay rent. Well, now we have a truly glorious and humorous story. Antifa activist goes viral, bragging about lawsuit against his landlord. And then it turns out his landlord is his grandmother. And is anyone really surprised that some dude living with his grandmother happens to be Antifa? Now, I'll tell you what, this story from the District Herald, but there's also like a mainstream report about this that actually kind of tries to defend the guy suing his grandmother because he doesn't want to pay her rent. And look, here's why this is funny. Just because you're family with someone doesn't mean you can't get into legal disputes. These things happen. And just because he's renting a house from his grandmother's company, whatever that really means, okay, fine. Does it really matter this is grandma? A little bit. Here's the reason, not as much as a lot of people might want to drag him for, but it does matter because he tried framing it like he was this rent strike activist who was going up against the machine, when it's really his nana was like, you got your stimulus money, are you going to pay your rent? And he was like, no way, grandma, I am not paying rent. And she was like, I can see that you have money, I'm your grandmother. And he was like, I'm not going to pay you. So they tried defending it. I mean, it's fair, I guess. He makes a statement, but come on. We know what this really is. Now, there's a bunch of other stuff going on, and we can get more serious, right? In Baltimore, a billboard for the mayor was vandalized with a message calling for no rent. And now we can see the true ramifications of these rent strike protests. Yes, we have to get things moving again. If you thought 30 million unemployment claims was bad, wait until it gets a whole lot worse. Landlords brace for huge wave of rental defaults after more than 30 million Americans applied for unemployment relief. Yeah, it's getting bad. And I don't blame the people who can't pay rent. I mean, we're all being forced into this shutdown. That's why many people are calling for the economy to be reopened. But I can blame the people who are yelling at their grandma saying, I don't want to pay rent, even though I got Trump bucks. So let's read this silly story, and then we'll read the more serious story, because sometimes it's fun to read the silliness. The District Herald says a militant Antifa activist went viral recently for filing a complaint against his landlord for tracking his coronavirus stimulus check and demanding rent. But he conveniently left out the landlord is his grandmother. Now, I gotta be fair. Just because it's your gammy doesn't mean she's allowed to track your private information. That is a privacy violation. But it's his grandmother. If he came out right away and was like, my grandmother is doing this, nobody would have taken him seriously. And yeah, maybe he should have been honest. Austin Goodrich received an outpouring of sympathy for his situation after filing the lawsuit in Oregon on April 22nd. The complaint said that the actions of his landlord left him feeling overwhelmingly violated and vulnerable. Goodrich was demanding that his grandmother waive all rent due until the end of his lease on June 30th, waive all due and past due amounts, return his security deposit, and give him an excellent rental reference. Since she did not respond to his absurd requests, he filed a lawsuit. Goodrich tweeted that his landlord had texted him hours after he received his stimulus money. They're called Trump bucks, asking whether he planned to use it to pay rent. However, the defendant is not only his grandmother and landlord, she is also his tax preparer. Oh, dude. Goodrich confirmed that TLC bookkeeping and tax prep is run by his grandmother, but said he does not associate with her outside of their tenant-landlord relationship. Again, it's fair to call out just because it's his grandmother. Doesn't give her the right to violate his privacy, but she's his tax preparer. She has access to his financials. Come on. Goodrich previously made waves when he helped shut down a college Republicans event at Portland State in 2019, according to a report from the Post Millennial. And now we can see who these people really are. They live with Gammy. They don't like people saying naughty words. The far-left activist claims that he publicly attacked and is suing his grandmother to bring attention to IRS vulnerabilities. He said, I initially remained anonymous on the issue for a while, but decided to use this opportunity to speak out on behalf of tenants that suffer abuses from their landlords and property managers. That this is the time to put your foot down and demand fair treatment of your rights, said Goodrich in an email exchange with the Oregonian Oregon Live. I also wanted to bring attention to the IRS's vulnerabilities that would allow anyone with access to social security numbers to gain illegal access to their computer systems. Goodrich locked his Twitter account after it was revealed that his landlord is his grandmother. Yeah, his grandmother should not be using his private information or his financial details to get access to the IRS tracking system. That is really messed up. I'll be totally, fair about that. You should not be doing it. But I also want to point out there are special rules when it comes to landlord-tenant relationships as well as employment when you are family. So I'll put it this way. I don't care if you've gone through a formal relationship with your grandmother. According to the local news outlet KGW8, he was saying that it was originally his grandmother and a partner, and he didn't want to be dealing with his grandma. So eventually the partner left, and then he found himself, with no choice but to be negotiating with his grandmother. Dude, you got hooked up. You got given an apartment because your gammy manages this, It's like, you want me to be sympathetic to you because your landlord is like abusing your rights. I can be, but when it's your grandmother hooking you up with a property and then you're like, I'm not paying rent, grandma. I'm going to be like, dude, pay your grandma. Come on. You got Trump bucks. Pay your grandmother. At the very least, don't sue her. Say, hey, grandma, times are tough. Can you help me out? And if she doesn't want to do it, you know what, man? Don't make it public. When you've got a legal family matter, you keep it to yourself, right? But he decided to try and turn this into an Antifa high horse rent strike protest. And now everyone's just kind of making fun of him for not paying his grandmother the money that he owes her. Look, there are a lot of people who don't have money. Some people didn't get stimulus checks. Some people aren't getting unemployment benefits. And we're facing a serious crisis. This is legit. I mean, no fooling. I understand why he wouldn't want to pay rent. And you know what? As much as we can make fun of the guy because it's his grandmother, to a varying degree, I respect the argument that we need some kind of control on rent for the time being. But you have to understand landlords manage properties. They have employees that do things. There's a viral meme going around where it's like landlord isn't a job. And they say that landlords don't even provide housing. They actually gatekeep housing. And it's like, dude, listen, do you know how much money it takes to build a property? To maintain 6 units, 12, 18, 30, however big your building is? It is not simple. It requires tremendous managerial power, construction, maintenance, utilities. They say the landlords shouldn't own that because they're gatekeeping. It's like, can you afford to build this building? Can you afford to build a house? No, you can't. It takes a lot of energy from human beings to build a house. So the way things work is that if you have the credit because you've worked and you've made money, and it's not true of everybody. Some people just get handed stuff. I understand. I'm not a big fan of it. Some people make money from nothing. Some people are born rich. That's a different issue. If you can go to a bank and say, I can prove that I can bring in enough money because I need $300,000 to build a house and I only make, $60,000 a year, something like that, the bank might consider it if you can pay them a certain amount per month for a certain amount of years. You see how this works? And then the bank issues the loan, and that loan money is then used to hire the labor to build the house. It's a financial system. That's how it works. Well, a landlord does just that, except landlords typically need, like in big cities, $1 million+ to build a multi-unit building. You don't have to pay the full $15,000 or $20,000 a month mortgage. You only got to pay a couple grand. You see how this works? So yes, landlord is a job. Landlords do help provide housing. Not all of them. Some of them are slumlords. We're not going to defend slumlords. These people are taking advantage of a system, and it's criminal. But if you work really hard, if you have a company that has enough credit or enough resources to build a building that costs something like 20 grand per month to maintain, and you have all of the tenants each paying, $2,500, and you have 10 units, then you make an extra 5 grand or so every month after you've covered the cost of everything. You see, there's a job involved. Now, they probably make a little bit more than that. The point is, all of these people calling for rent strike, the ones that can't afford to pay, I get it. We're all screwed on this one. A lot of people can't work. Revenue's down across the board. Revenue for me is down. It's gonna get bad. And now that landlords are bracing for a huge wave of rental defaults due to unemployment, the last thing we need are uppity people who got their Trump bucks now saying, but I shouldn't have to pay anyway. The Trump bucks were for you. It was to help you cover your bills. Now, I will be fair again. $1,200 doesn't go very far. And if someone's got to choose between eating food and paying rent, I'll tell you what, man, they're going to choose to eat food. So the story about the dude and his grandmother is something else. I mean, I'm sure he could work out a real deal with his grandmother. And even if he can't, bro, don't go on Twitter and Facebook and be like, yo, I'm suing my landlord, because then people are going to be like, dude, that's your grandmother. What are you doing? But if you really do have a dispute with your landlord, you might have to actually sue. So, look, I get it. Maybe he doesn't know his grandmother. Maybe they're estranged. Maybe it's like he never talked to her and then his parents hooked him up. But either way, it's an in-family hookup. Regardless of whether or not we should or shouldn't have rent strikes, regardless of whether or not unemployment's getting bad, we are going to see people default on rent. And I've been warning about this for like over a month now, that we're going to see the next wave of economic crash, of the crash. Because first you have service shutdown, right? Anything that requires actions or interaction between two people, gone. Immediately, these people are without pay. Now we go a couple weeks of these people not spending money and these stores shut down. And what happens? The media gets hit. It's true. Like, I'm not gonna shed too many tears from any of these media companies, but I'm getting hit by it too, because advertising is dropping. Naturally, people like me are more resilient because we have lower overhead in our home studios and things like that, as compared to like a big New York digital agency. But because these restaurants get shut down, they're no longer advertising on Facebook and on websites, on Google. Everybody in the media gets hit by this. Now take all of those employees of all those companies who have had pay cuts, been laid off, and the other workers who have been laid off. And trust me, the media is fairly insulated. Like, a lot of these journalists are still working. Take all these people without pay, and you got a serious problem. There's no economic movement there. That means people can't afford to pay their health care. They can't afford to pay their rent. Then the next wave hits the landlords. Now the landlords can't pay their ground maintenance, building maintenance. They can't pay their taxes or utilities. And the wave just ripples outward until the whole machine screeches to a halt. In order for the engine to turn, it needs fuel. Money is not the fuel. Money is more like lubricant that makes things move smoothly. It makes it easier. The real fuel of the economy is the value a human can provide to another human. Some humans own robots that provide the value for you. And there are some real complications around automation we'll have to discuss. But if people aren't working, you can jam lube into that engine and it'll keep, moving a little bit and then slowly start slowing down, because no matter how much money you pump into it, you are not creating value to keep the engine moving. That's the real fuel. If you can't spend money at a restaurant, at a bar, at a barber shop, the money loses value because it gets you less things. Then you're going to have to contend with the fact that doctors also have money, are going to say, it's not worth it. I'm getting paid, but what can I really do with it? All the restaurants are closed. I guess I just get some food. It's better than nothing. But eventually, even the food stores aren't going to be able to be supported because meat processing plants are being shut down. And farmers can't send their vegetables and milk to processing plants. The machine is grinding to a halt. So we can sit back and we could be like, red strike, yeah, just UBI. Look, man, flooding your engine with oil to make sure it can move won't make it move. And that's kind of how I view the UBI thing. Like, yeah, you can kind of like, give it a hit. That's not real energy going into the system. The Daily Mail reports, in the last week of April, rental payments were not far off normal, according to the National Multifamily Housing Council. 92% of the rental properties in its data paid or made partial payments, compared with 93% in March. However, the lockdown is now in force throughout the country, and people's incomes have been battered. Although eviction moratoriums are in place, many of those will have expired by the end of July, around the same time that supplements to employment benefits will be drying up. Bruce Brunner, who lives in Minneapolis, said 24 of his 120 tenants have called to say they won't be able to pay their rent on time. 6 weeks ago, you could name your price and you'd have multiple people applying, Brunner told the New York Times. Now you're deferring and working out payment plans, and it's only going to get worse. Sean Riley, 25, joined thousands of other tenants across New York on Friday for May Day protests demanding rent cancellation. The government doesn't control your rent. It's a business. Could you imagine if people demanded food price cancellation? I should be able to go in and just take whatever food I want. It doesn't work that way. Someone's got to make the food, and they want to be compensated with something of value that they can use to get something of value in return. We can just go back to barter, I suppose. Hey, what's that? You got a PS4 and a bunch of extra video games? Go to your landlord and say, I'll tell you what. I can't pay your rent, but I do have these shiny PlayStations. Here's the problem, though. Barter doesn't work because the utility companies don't want your PlayStation. It might work between people. It won't work between organization and institutions, which is why money streamlines economic transactions. They say as Riley and fellow tenants unfurled banners at their walk up to the Crown Heights neighborhood, cars surrounded Governor Andrew Cuomo's mansion in New York State capital, Albany, for a socially distanced protest. Similar movements took place across the country. This we understand. So look at these rent freeze protests that were out in New York. How come they're not complaining about this? Why aren't they saying these people are violating shutdown orders and quarantine? Why isn't the media attacking them? They don't really care. They tend to be on the side of the left for whatever reason. I guess it's because they're in cities as well, and so they're more likely to align with the ideology of these protests. But I'll tell you what, man. Here, let me read a quote for you. They say an estimated 12,000 unique tenants across 100 buildings in America's coronavirus epicenter participated in Friday's strike, according to preliminary figures from the advocacy group Housing Justice for All. I'm not going to lie. It is scary saying to our landlord we're not paying rent, said Riley, a Democratic Socialists of America member who, along with 4 roommates, owes $3,100 per month. I had a pit in my stomach when we sent that email, but that's what we have to be doing right now. Riley still has work. He declined to go into the specifics of his job for fear of repercussions, but says numerous colleagues lost employment and is afraid he will be next. And there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you 2 stories of far leftists who had money but don't want to pay. To be fair, the guy with his grandma, he got a stimulus check. I don't know if he's still working. Maybe the stimulus is enough for him to eat and he doesn't want to just give that up for rent. I can respect that. I don't like it, but I can respect someone saying, I have to eat, yo. Food comes first. This dude still has a job. You mean to tell me that you're still working and you got Trump bucks and you ain't going to pay rent? You see, this is disingenuous. These people don't actually care about the economic crisis coming. They're making it worse. Many of them probably gleefully making it worse, hoping that everything collapses so they can get their socialist system. But as we can see, even those who believe in, helping the working class, when they get money, they ain't giving it up. That's what humans do, man. You think if you get a socialist system, you're going to have a benevolent dictator? You think you're going to have a real democratic system? No way, dude. It's going to be a bunch of cronies circling the wagons, making sure they get what they want and you get nothing. And there we go. They say his neighbor, Stephen Henderson, whose household of 4 roommates splits paying $3,400 in rent each month, moved to the city from Colorado last summer and has lost all his freelance work in the television and film industry. The 24-year-old received his first unemployment check last week. U.S. jobless numbers have shot up to past a crippling 30 million. He is still waiting for the $1,200 stimulus promised by the federal government. So if you're getting unemployment, you're going to have to explain to me how it is that you can't afford to pay rent. The reality is they don't want to pay rent. That's it. These people would have striked against rent with or without the coronavirus pandemic. They're using it as an excuse. And that's why this other dude, the dude and his grandma, that was a virtue signal. That was him being like, look at me filing a lawsuit against my landlord. Power to the people. Woohoo. Yeah, bro, your grandma. I get it. These other people, they just don't want to pay rent. That's it. So here's the big problem, right? Let's say you have a system that's totally socialist. The idea is that everybody works and everyone shares in the rewards. But when you have people who have the ability to transfer their value, a trade value item to another person in exchange for some goods or service, they say, no, give it to me for free. What do you think's going to happen then if you implement socialism? These people are going to be demanding that they get special benefits and give up nothing in return. Meanwhile, across the country, conservatives and Trump supporters and many moderates and some liberals are saying reopen the economy. Why? We want to work. We want to make things, and we want to be in control of our lives. These people are saying, government do it, government give me money, and let me live there for free. Yet the media is ignoring, or at least supporting these people while slamming the Trump supporters and the conservatives who just want jobs. You know what, man? How are we supposed to have a fair and rational conversation about how to make this great economic machine work when the media is broken? I don't know. And that's why I look back at this story about the Forest Grove renter sues landlord for tracking coronavirus stimulus check. And they don't tell you. Okay, there it is. It's the lady from the Oregonian. That's why. Oh, no, the Oregonian's not that bad. I'm surprised they did this. They tried to be fair, I guess. Fair, I'll do air quotes. Listen, this dude was his grandmother, but the media wants to make it seem more sensational, I suppose. So I gotta be fair. I'll wrap it up on this. I get it. Just because it's his grandmother doesn't mean that they have a good relationship or anything. But the way I see it is it's a guy getting hooked up by his family. And now he's embarrassed because people found out. Yes, Antifa, his grandmother, is a landlord. Surprise, surprise, the upper class privileged individuals are complaining and demanding socialism. The people in where was this? Where are these people protesting? This dude, Stephen Henderson, has a job. So does the guy Riley. The people with the money are the ones protesting, demanding free stuff. Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, the people whose shops have been shut down are getting arrested and getting fined because they're defying the order because they don't get the same privilege. Where's the media at? I love it. I'll see you all at 4 p.m. on my main channel, youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel. I know it's weird. I'll see you all there.